All right. Well, so a few weeks ago, I managed to, I think the technical term is destroy. I think I destroyed our printer because I somehow had something in front of it. So when I hit print, the whole thing jammed up. And I fished like, I don't know, it felt like 6 pages out of this printer. And ever since, I have not been able to do the right thing with it. I can't get it to do exactly what I want. I've changed ink cartridges. I've done nozzle checks and whatever. I have no idea what I'm doing. And So I'll write my lesson and then I print it out. So I have a hard copy. I don't trust technology to not fail me when I'm teaching. So I look to have a hard copy. And so I got down here this morning, and usually Trace will print my lesson off. Well, you'll notice that Trace isn't here. My girls aren't here because it's Girl Scout cookie season. And so they're at Walmart this afternoon hawking Girl Scout cookies. So if anybody is in the mood for Girl Scout cookies, you can go to Walmart this afternoon. And my guess is that they have the entrances covered. Like they'll set you up. So knowing that they were going to have to leave, I said something to Trace. I said, "Well, hey, I need to make sure I get my lesson printed." And she's like, "Okay, well, I'll make sure you get this before I leave." Well, here it is. Steve, you'll appreciate this. At 11:08. Now, let's just jump ahead here. Core value star here is what? Timeliness, right? Timeliness is right here. And at 11:08, I get this text message which says, "I'm sorry, did you get your lesson?" So she remembered. She just remembered a little on the late side. So if she watches this lesson back, Jess, we're gonna have to edit this just as an aside. But that's where we are. But good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining. This is going to be one of my favorite lessons, and I know I've shared that with you before. But this one's pretty cool. This one's pretty cool, and I'm looking forward to giving you some things to consider today as we talk about biblical leadership. Now, as an aside, I will not be here next week. Trace will not be here next week. This is the opportunity for some volunteer if they want to step forward and say, you know what, I would love to teach next week. This would be a great time for that to really start to stick with you and to say something before you leave today. Otherwise, Jess is on spring break this week, which means I will have to write the lesson and record the lesson so you can watch the lesson here next week, and I'll have to figure that out. I don't know exactly how that's going to work, but I'll at least get a recording of it, if nothing else, so that you guys can meet. My humor won't be anywhere near as good recorded as it is live. I get. Well, you could do that. You could just go all out with your editing on that this week. But next Saturday, I'm headed to Orlando for a leadership conference, and I'm looking forward to learning some new things, and I'll probably get some new perspectives to bring back and share with you as we continue this particular study. That all said, let's jump into it here. Let's start off when we talk about core values, we have said time and time again for months and months on end now, Jesus always valued people. And at Cochranton Community Church, we have 8 core values. Let's go through these. Not don't bury me with them, but let's get a few going here. What's one of our core values here? Stewardship, Bible, prayer, service, outreach. This is awesome. I'm sorry, worship. Yep. I can't. You have no idea how encouraging it is for me to hear you guys just rattling all these things off. It means the world to me. Means the world to me. Relevancy. Okay. And I just didn't hear that one. I was just amazed at how you're doing that. And then this group, we have the core value of timeliness, and we added a core value about a month ago, which was the core value of growth. All right. All right. So we're going to do our best to grow today. Now, we've talked before about how every one of us is a leader. Now, by show of hands, how many of you believe that? There's probably a few of you that are like, I don't know. just a little uncomfortable, just a little uncomfortable with that. But I want to just ask you to consider this. In this room, we have however many people we have in this room. And if we were given a certain task, I'm going to suggest to you that we would probably have some different leaders step forward. So I made a. This is by no means a comprehensive list. This is just a list to consider. But if this group of people here, if we were given the task of fixing a car engine, who would we look towards? There'd be people that you would not look towards, is there not? Yeah, they'd be like, well, not looking that way, right? What about if the task came that we needed to bake a cake? There's some folks that you would look towards, and there's some folks that you would look away from, is there not? What about balancing a checkbook? Some of you are like, don't make eye contact with me. You don't want me to balance your checkbook, right? You know. What about this is one I had. What if it came down to planning a wedding? Like guys would be like completely checked out on this. Like, don't I just have to show up, right? You know, that's the extent of it. But there's all these details that go into it, right? Different people in this room would say, you know what? That's me. That's me. Ron's sitting all the way in the back, so I can't see him, but I know he would not be the one. I'm pretty sure you would not be the one that would say, let me plan your wedding, right? It'd be very basic. What about if we had to wallpaper a room? Who would lead that project? Right? Yeah, oh, right there. Mary, as I was doing this, I was thinking, what can I say that it was just like everybody would point at Mary? And I didn't think it was wallpaper a room, but Henry, thank you. Thank you for pointing her out here. What about if somebody... I thought he did. I thought... I don't have my glasses on. I can't see a whole lot. So I saw Henry get excited that somebody knew how to wallpaper, and I thought he pointed at you. Oh, okay. All right. So what about what if we needed to have somebody teach a child to read? So like there's leaders that help teach children to lead, are there not? Or lead children to read. That's easy for me to say. What if we need to make a video for social media? Like, who would be in charge of that, right? You know, so I throw out these different ideas just to help illustrate this. In each of these situations and dozens of others, would we look to the same person in this room? And the answer is probably not. We probably would not look to the same person for each one of those tasks. Chances are, as you look around the room, you would probably pick different people to lead different challenges, right? And I would ask you, why is that? Why do you think we would look to different people to lead us through different tasks? And the answer to that is our leadership principle for this week, which is called the law of respect. Now, the law of respect reads, people naturally, let me make sure I don't misword this. People naturally follow leaders stronger than themselves. So when we bring up any of these ideas, be it fix an engine, bake a cake, balance a checkbook, whatever the challenge may be, what happens is people will look around and they'll say, you know what, that person is going to be stronger at that than me. I'm going to follow them. I would defer to them. Now, for each of us in this room, we each have what I would call a leadership number. And I would suggest to you that number, and you can use it on a scale from 1 to 5, 1 to 10, 1 to 100, whatever scale you want to use, just for the sake of argument here, let's just say that it's a scale of 1 to 10. We each have a different leadership number in different areas. right? So we Brendan was in the district swimming championships yesterday, and if you were to say, Jess, can you lead me to understand swimming? I would say my leadership number on swimming is about, well, if you round up, it's 0. I think that's how it goes. I know nothing. I don't understand that. I understand that there's different strokes. I don't understand what the difference is. I don't understand why, if there's different strokes, people use different strokes. Like when everybody just used the best stroke. I don't understand any of that. I get confused. But we each have our own leadership number, and that number varies based on the objective. And once the objective is clear, people will naturally follow the strongest leader for that task. That's the law of respect, right? And I would say this, the more leadership ability a person has, the more quickly that person will realize or will recognize the leadership ability or the lack of leadership ability in other people. Right? So we all have it, and maybe we think this is the right person to follow, but if we realize that they're not quite as sharp at this particular objective as what we are, we fall off. We fall off pretty quick. So I would tell you, this is what I did. I printed all my notes front and back. I went from the introduction to point number 5 in my outline. I was like, what is going on here? So but what causes somebody to respect a leader? I'm going to give you 6 things today for you to consider, and you can add to it. You can say, I don't really buy that. You can add. You can adjust this list as necessary. But I would suggest that we all have some natural leadership ability, right? Natural leadership ability. And I'm not really going to go into that. We just recognize that some of us have some natural wiring or proclivity that this is a little more comfortable for us, or that it sticks out. The second part that I'm going to give you is just around the idea of respect. Now, I'm going to tell you that on planet Earth, there are plenty of poor examples that we can look to. We can find all sorts of poor examples of leadership on planet Earth. And you can go to some of the more extreme cases where you have dictators or some quote-unquote evil rulers, whatever. You can find all these folks, people that may rely on violence or intimidation to get the people that they lead to do what they want them to do. Don't miss this particular point. If you're a note taker, I would encourage you to take this note down. All leadership is voluntary. All leadership is voluntary. Now, you may volunteer and you may realize very quickly, I'm not following this person much longer, right? You can volunteer to follow, and if it's not kept, it will you will quickly fall off. But I want to share this idea with you. When leaders show respect, they gain respect. When leaders show respect, they gain respect. Now, maybe you can think of an example where there was a leader who was disrespectful to someone else. And perhaps as soon as you saw that level of disrespect, you're like, I'm not following this guy anymore. Right? I can think of several examples of this. I can tell you of I could tell you all sorts of meetings I've been in. I was in a marketing meeting back in the day where we were trying to figure out how can we get our pharmacists to give more flu shots, and so we're throwing out ideas, and we said, come election season, there's all these political signs that are out in people's yards and along the side of the road. What if we put up a sign that said, get your flu shot here, and we put that out in front of our store? And the response that came back was, well, once you have a marketing degree, we'll listen to what you have to say. And I would tell you from that moment on, my level of respect was pretty low for that particular group of people. I've actually witnessed disrespect offered to somebody in a large room like this, right? And I can tell you that when something like that happens, the entire energy of the room shifts. And maybe you've seen that as well. Um, but when that lack of respect happens, you can quickly lose respect for the leader. Now, gaining respect follows a particular pattern. Wow. Gaining respect follows a pattern. The first thing that people can do is they can respect you as a person. And when they respect you as a person, they will admire you. And I'm going to suggest to you that there's a lot of people out there that you admire. Wow, this person seems to be pretty good. You can think of, at least in popular culture, you can probably think of musicians or actors or something like that. You may respect them as a person. But when you get a little bit closer and you have somebody that you respect as a friend, this is somebody that you love, right? You love your friends. But when you when you respect somebody as a leader, what you will end up doing is you will end up following that leader. So you can admire somebody's talent, yet you can absolutely hate their guts, right? And I'll use some sports analogy. I'll use a lot of sports analogies today, but let's say hypothetically that you're a Browns fan, right? Let's say hypothetically let's say hypothetically there's somebody who's a Browns fan, right? Now, they can respect the talent of the competing team, be it the Baltimore Ravens or the Pittsburgh Steelers, but they can absolutely hate their guts. Right? That's just understand that nuanced level. You can respect them you can admire somebody as a person because you have respect, right? You can love lots of people, right? You can have lots of friends, but you have a lot of friends where you would say, I ain't following this person anywhere. Right? And you can probably think of several examples. I see so many grins around the room. This is like there's all sorts of people coming to mind. Like, yeah, they're my friend, but they don't have a clue where they're going, and I would not follow where they're going. Right? There's a lot of people out there that you would not follow anywhere. So respect is an important piece of it. We have to give respect to get respect. Number 3, courage. If we want to be growing our respect, we need to display courage. Leaders must do what is right even when the action is unpopular. Right? There's a phrase that goes something like, managers do things right while leaders do the right thing. And you've probably experienced this somewhere. I can say I've experienced this in fast food restaurants, right? Or you maybe you've observed some customer service disaster unfolding in front of you, and they're like, well, this is what we're supposed to do. Right? Maybe you've been to the airport and you accidentally tried to get on the plane at the wrong time. And were radically chastised and corrected, like, oh no, you shouldn't be here. We're only boarding zones 1 and 2 now, right? There's things like that can happen. You'll hear phrases like, well, these are the rules. These are the things that we have to follow, right? Those, to me, those are prime examples. But I would suggest to you that if you look back at history and you identify some of the great leaders in history, you will find that the reason that they stand out in history is because they had courage to do something. They had to stand up and do the right thing. Number 4 is success. We will respect successful people, will we not? In 1986, I was beginning to follow Major League Baseball, And for any of you that followed Major League Baseball back then, one of the dominant teams was the New York Mets. In 1986, they won the World Series. Um, they were just a phenomenal they were a phenomenal team. And the only time I could see them in 1986 was if they were featured on the Saturday afternoon baseball game, right? Because in 1986 we got how many channels, folks? 3. That's all there was, right? That's what we had. And if I wanted to follow and understand what was happening in baseball, what I would have to do is I would have to listen to the games on the radio. And you know what games you do not listen to in Northwest Pennsylvania? You do not get to listen to New York Mets baseball broadcasts. What do you get to listen to? You get to listen to the Pirates. And as I started following that over the years, you know what happened to the Pirates? They got better. They actually got to be pretty good in the early 90s. And you know what I found? Is that somehow, even though I started off being a Mets fan, I had become a Pirates fan. And for any of you that remember when Bionic Sid Bream with the fake hip and fake leg and whatever rounded third and scored the winning run to send the Braves to the World Series, I was physically sick for days after that. How did that happen? I can tell you right now, it's because of the law of respect. I gained respect for that team. And why? Well, a big part of it is because they were successful. And we see this all the time, right? The Cardinals, they put a good team out on the field, on the floor, whatever. You want to know what happens? More people start showing up. We call those fair weather fans, right? But it's an expression of the law of respect. Good things are happening, so people will show up. People will follow. People will follow. And why is that? People respect success. Number 5 I'll put on here is loyalty. We give a lot of respect to somebody who stays in the same place for an extended period of time, and we know that that doesn't happen as frequently today as what it did a generation ago. It does not happen as frequently today, and I'll tell you one of the things that I try to take advantage of whenever it comes to mind or whenever these things come up is when people have wedding anniversaries, right? And you find somebody who has hit some milestone, whatever that milestone needs to be for you, especially younger people, when they say, "Oh, we've been together 10 years," you know what I do? I say, "That's fantastic." Wow, that takes some loyalty to do, because we know staying married is not easy, right? There's like hard work that goes into it, and I'll say, hey, we need more examples like you out there. And that number may be whatever that number is: 5 years, 10 years, 25 years, 50 years. In the rare instance, you find a 75-year marriage out there, right? What do? There's some loyalty. You know that wasn't all sunshine and lollipops. We respect people who are loyal. You guys going to make 75? Is that what you're? Oh, how you feel or the actual? Well, either way, I guess. So. Yeah, that's wonderful. We need examples like that, right? We need, and we respect that. And again, we know that there were some different that they obviously have gone through some challenges, and they still remained loyal. Number 6. Adding value to people. We respect people who have added value to us, have we not? Perhaps the greatest source of respect comes from adding value to other people. Now, I'll suggest this. Think of someone who has added value to you, and I would suggest that you probably respect them. And I would suggest that if they've added a lot of value to you, you probably respect them all the more. You probably all have some favorite teacher, right? There was some teacher that you had that when it came down to it, they added a lot of value to you, and they stand out amongst all the rest, right? That's probably something that you have. Maybe you had a boss, or maybe you had a parent, right, that added a lot of value to you, and you have a lot of respect for who they are and what they've done. And if they said, this is where I'm going, they would say, you know what? I would go there too. I would follow. You likely in your life have someone who has really added value to you, and it has left a mark. Now, this is probably the main outline that we're going to have today. But in this particular study, we are studying biblical leadership, and as we study biblical leadership, we are looking at the greatest leader of all time, in Jesus, right? And I want you just to think of some of these, and I've called out a couple things here for us to just go through and use this as a checklist of sorts. And so if you want to follow along, I would encourage you to turn to Matthew chapter 4. We're going to look at verses 18 through 20. Matthew chapter 4, verses 18 through 20. Now, if you look at the first part of Matthew, we see that we have a few stories that are recorded. We have the story of Jesus' genealogy. We have the we have the story of Jesus' birth and the visiting of the wise men. We have stories from Jesus' childhood when he goes to Egypt and then he comes back. And now what's he do? He goes and he meets with John the Baptist, and after he's done with John the Baptist and he gets baptized, he goes out into the wilderness. And we're going to pick up the story here when he comes back from the wilderness. Verse 18, it says, as Jesus was walking beside the Sea of Galilee, he saw two brothers, Simon called Peter and his brother Andrew. They were casting a net into the lake, for they were fishermen. Come, follow me. The two most powerful words any leader can say, follow me. I lost my place. This is ruining my whole effect here. Verse 19, come, follow me, Jesus said, and I will send you out to fish for people. Verse 20, at once they left their nets and followed him. Going on from there, he saw two other brothers, James, son of Zebedee, and his brother John. They were in a boat with their father Zebedee, preparing their nets. Jesus called them, and immediately they left the boat and their father and followed him. How does that happen? How does that happen? I would have to suggest to you that there was a huge amount of respect. Huge amount of respect. Jesus says, follow me, and they do. Let me ask you, how many people could you say, follow me, and they would jump out of a boat to follow you? Maybe that's just me feeling sorry for myself. I'm not that good of a leader, I know that. But this is something else. This is next level leadership here that we see with Jesus. That we see the respect part here for sure being illustrated with how he called his disciples. Now, what about courage? You think Jesus had to have some courage living in those days? I would suggest to you he did. Right? He absolutely did. He had to stand up to the religious leaders of the day. And I would ask if you would turn in the Gospel of John, John chapter 8, verses 42, 43, and 44. John 8, 42. Jesus is having this, he's having this dispute with the Pharisees and the teachers of the law. And he says, Jesus said to you, or said to them, If God were your Father, you would love me, for I have come here from God. I have not come on my own. God sent me. Why is my language not clear to you? Because you are unable to hear what I say. You belong to your father, the devil, and you want to carry out your father's desires. Pause. How much courage do you think that takes to say? I would suggest that takes a boatload of courage to say. He was a murderer from the beginning, not holding to the truth, for there is no truth in him. When he lies, he speaks his native language, for he is a liar and the father of lies. Jesus had to have courage to stand up to the Pharisees. And this is just one example. We know that there's many other examples that we can find in Scripture. He always had to have that courage. It took lots of courage. Now, what about, and I'm not going to go into all of these because we're probably way over on time here. We're getting there. We talk about how people will respect success. What type of success did Jesus have? I just want you to think about this. How many people did Jesus heal? How many evil spirits did he cast out? We can read the stories about how Jesus feeds the 5,000. How did 5,000 people get to following him? I'll suggest to you that they saw that success and they said, that's where we want to be. We respect that. Right? Now, as we move into the idea of loyalty, I would look at it at Jesus' loyalty as not giving up on his task, even in the face of hardship and adversity. For this, let's turn to the Gospel of Luke chapter 4. Luke 4, verses 24 through 30. Maybe. Jesus speaking, he says, "Truly I tell you," he continued, "no prophet is accepted in his hometown. I assure you that there were many widows in Israel in Elijah's time, when the sky was shut for 3.5 years and there was a severe famine throughout the land. Yet Elijah was not sent to any of them, but to a widow in Zarephath, in the region of Sidon. And there were many in Israel with leprosy in the time of Elisha the prophet. Yet not one of them was clean, or was cleansed, only Naaman the Syrian. All the people in the synagogue were furious when they heard this. They were furious. They got up. They drove him out of town and took him to the brow of the hill on which the town was built in order to throw him off the cliff. You know what he didn't do? He did not back down. He remained loyal to his task. Verse 30. But he walked right through the crowd and went on his way. They knew that there was something here. There was some inflammatory language that they were fired up about, but there was some level of respect that they allowed him to walk right out. In spite of there being a mob-type environment. So I'm going to put a check next to loyalty, because Jesus did not back down. He didn't say, well, you know what, maybe I was a bit harsh here. Maybe I went a little too far. He stayed with the message that he was supposed to deliver. We have talked for some time about how Jesus values people, and you see him add value to everyone he meets. And I just want to, I thought maybe I should just take because I don't know that I've intentionally done this, and this is on me. But when we talk about adding value, what's your definition of that? And I want to give you a definition of what does it mean to add value to somebody. And this is a very simple definition. I would say that adding value means that you leave people a little better off than when you found them. That's adding value, right? Just a little. Doesn't have to be a huge amount. If you want to add value, you just leave them a little better off than when you found them. I'd like to think that in this environment, I add value to you, right? You come in here, maybe you come in here and you say, you know what, Jess, I've heard a lot of this before. But hopefully you get something, and there's a little bit of value that I've added to you for whenever you walk out of here today, right? That's the goal. But that's what Jesus did with everybody. Everybody he came in contact with, what did he do? He added value. He tried to make them, he tried to put them in a little better place than when he encountered them at first. And I would suggest to you that even includes the Pharisees, right? Even the people that he disagreed with, he was trying to add value to them and show. Now they may not pick it up, right? Let's be honest. There are times that we've been taught lessons that we didn't pick up, or is it just me? Like sometimes I have to learn the lesson a few times. Sometimes I got to learn it the hard way. The hard way, right? And I want you to understand this. Jesus was not the only person who had influence in his day. There were other leaders around, right? But these are the things that Jesus did. He had some natural leadership ability. He generated respect. He showed courage. He was loyal to his mission. He was successful in what he did. He was adding value to people. And this gets me to the real story of what I wanted to share with you today. We're going to go along today, and I apologize. The real story that we are going to look at today is in Matthew chapter 8. Matthew chapter 8, verses 5 through 13. For those of you that have headers in your scripture, this may be titled The Faith of the Centurion. It said, when Jesus had entered Capernaum, a centurion came to him asking for help. Lord, he said, my servant lies at home paralyzed, suffering terribly. Jesus said to him, shall I come and heal him? The centurion replied, Lord, I do not deserve to have you come under my roof, but just say the word, and my servant will be healed. For I myself am a man under authority, with soldiers under me. I tell this one, go, and he goes, and this one, come, and he comes. I say to my servant, do this, and he does it. When Jesus heard this, Jesus was amazed. And he said to those following him, truly I tell you, I have not found anyone in Israel with such great faith. I say to you that many will come from the east and the west, and will take their places at the feast with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob in the kingdom of heaven. But the subjects of the kingdom will be thrown outside into darkness, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Then Jesus said to the centurion, go, let it be done just as you believe it would. And the servant was healed at that moment. What level of respect did this centurion show Jesus? Now, I don't know how sharp you are on your ancient Roman history. All right, so I'm going to let's take a little bit of a tangent here. We're going to have a little bit of ancient Roman history. Now, Roman Empire was big. Roman Empire was big, right? So we have Rome. Rome is here. It's in Italy, right? We come over. We have Greece. We have the Holy Land over here. Now, we have Rome, and they had different things that they called provinces, similar to how we have states, right? There's different areas. Like this one was, or one of these is called Macedonia. You'll see that in Scripture, right? You'll see Macedonia. That's like a big chunk of Greece, right? So there were places that were called provinces, and these were places where they were on very, very friendly terms with Rome. And when you're on friendly terms with Rome, you know what you don't need there? The army. You don't need it. There's peace. It's calm, right? But as we start to get further away from Rome, there's some folks that get to be a little rebellious. And one of those areas was over here. They were a little rebellious. And as such, Rome said, hey, we can't have this going on. You know what we need? We need to have some members of the army there. We need to keep the peace. And so we have this centurion. And by definition, a centurion is somebody who has authority over 100 people. Centurion, right? There's 100 people that he has authority over. Now, who do you think is rebelling against Rome here? Jews. That's who it is, right? There were some Jewish folks there that were causing the issues, right? And so this centurion is there to keep things under control. That's what he's there for. Yet now he has a servant who is sick. And you know what? He says, who can I go to? How can I help my servant? And what does he see out in society? There's a leader out there who has some natural leadership ability. He's got a great deal of respect. You probably sees that he's standing up for the right people, right? He sees all these successful healings that are happening, right? He sees that in the face of the adversity, he doesn't give up. And he says, this is who I got to go to. This is who I have to go to. The centurion respected Jesus. The centurion respected Jesus' authority. We know that the Jews were expecting that when the Messiah came, he was going to be some type of political or military leader, and what would happen? They're going to kick Rome out. Right, that was the popular thought of the day. It's like, oh my goodness, it's so awful under Rome here. You know, when the Messiah shows up, he's going to get rid of all this. There were at least that thought, and that's not what Jesus did. He didn't come to liberate us physically. He came to liberate us spiritually, to set us free. This centurion had so much respect for who Jesus was and what he was doing that he sought help from someone he was probably tasked with keeping a very close eye on. Now, what about you? How are you with respect? In these different areas, how would you score yourself? How would you score yourself on any of these 6 different areas? And going back to our first week of the study, we looked at the law of the lid. And we said, what do we need to do? We need to work on raising our lid. We need to work on raising the lids of those folks around us. And I'm going to tell you what, a way that you can raise your lid is by gaining more respect. And right here is a blueprint. How can you get more respect? Whatever number you put next to this, what happens if that number goes from whatever it is to 1 more? Now, let's have a little bit of a reality check here. I was on the men's prayer call a few weeks ago, and the question came up, and it was like, well, how would you rate your prayer life? And I'll tell you, we're probably all our own worst critics, right? Is there anybody here that is not their own worst critic? Okay, nobody will agree with that. Okay, all right. So I don't know what the opposite of that is, but you know, like, well, so how would you rate your prayer life? Well, I was like, well, I don't know, 3. I don't know. And you know, we maybe tend to look down a little bit on how well we're doing, and because we recognize that we could all be doing better, right? We probably could all be doing so much better. But I want to encourage you to take just a minute and put a number down. I don't care what the number is, but I would ask you this question: with whatever number you put down, why is it that number and not 1 less? If you look at courage, and on a scale from 1 to 10, You say, you know what? I think my courage is a 4. I would ask you right now, why is your courage a 4 and not a 3? And you know what you're going to do? You're going to come up with all the reasons why you're more courageous. You're going to come up with a bunch of them. Well, a 3, this is what a 3 would do. But I'm a 4. This is what I do. Right? And I'm going to tell you, the difference between a 4 and a 5, or a 5 and a 6, or a 6 and a 7, it ain't that far. You can probably come up with a very short list of the things that would say, you know what, I would go from a 4 to a 5 if I did this. And right there you have a pathway. Right there you have a way forward. You can do that for any one of these things. You take whatever number it is, and I encourage you to look at it through the lens of, why is it this number and not one less, and hey, what would it take to be one more? And that's going to help you figure out the way forward in that regard. So with that, I've completely decimated our timeliness core value, but I would like to close by giving you the ACT acronym. Based on what you have learned today, what action will you take? What change will you make? And is there anything that you learned today that you can teach to somebody else for your sake and for theirs?